Hello, I am Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about the Candy Cornucopia Godfest that is live in North America and EU. So, as with any Godfest, the decision as to whether or not you should roll should be solely based on your own unique individual monster box situation. While certain cards may be beneficial to certain players, it may not necessarily be applicable to you, and vice versa. Cards that are maybe underwhelming for the average player may have tremendous value for yourself. So, the Candy Cornucopia Godfest will be introducing 2 new Godfest exclusives, which I will be discussing later on in this video, along with 5 times rates for all Godfest exclusives. However, there will be no featured Pantheon cards. Now, this is a little unfortunate because it is my understanding, again, this is all speculation, but every card has a certain baseline value that is multiplied during a Godfest. So, with fewer cards being featured, aka no Pantheons, we will have those Godfest exclusives being able to acquire at their 5 times rates, which would be normal if there are other things featured alongside of it, but it means that those silvers and less than desirable gold eggs will be available at higher rates, so to speak. So again, this is speculation, but it seems to be a relatively consistent trend in terms of rolling rates across Godfest from a lot of other players. However, all cards that roll out of the rare machine that are featured, such as the Godfest exclusives, will come out at level 50. Unfortunately, it is paired with a very lackluster Wise Dragon and Heroic Warriors Carnival, which has 2 times rates, as well as not even giving any pluses or even a Tamadra alongside of every roll. So there's not even a bait being available for this, and that's a little spooky, so to speak. It is Halloween after all. But regardless, this is the Godfest at a glance. We have so many Godfest exclusives nowadays, and if a Godfest exclusive is not pictured in their respective day, it means you cannot actually roll them. So basically, in this example here, Cana is not available in day 1, and it's only available in day 2. So I use an S through D ranking system along with pluses and minuses if applicable, and basically Nay is a relatively new Godfest exclusive. I do have a full review for you can read here. However, she's somewhat old-ish news. It's about a month or so since she was released, so I'm going to be focusing on the new cards that come out. So, Kami Musubi is challenging to type and pronounce for myself, so I'm going to call her Kami, and she's a new 6-star Godfest exclusive, and if we were to compare her to an existing card already, she would have most similarities to Yogg because of a very similar leader skill. She has a health clause multiplier in that you have to ideally be above 80% health to achieve your maximum damage, as well as being 2 combo oriented. She needs to match dark and wood orbs, whereas Yogg needs light light. So in theory, Kami is a little more consistent in terms of activation on a given board, because in theory, if you clear a whole board, you're much more likely to have 3 dark, 3 wood than you are to have 6 light orbs. However, her active skill is significantly weaker, and in my opinion, that is a big downside overall, because Yogg is somewhat revered for his powerful active skill, because his active skill can create a board that is very favorable. It's a bi-elemental that has lights and hearts, so that's amazing, as well as doing bind clearing as well as healing at the same time, and that healing is important to basically maintain within his health zone. Kami can also heal with her active skill, however the extra benefits are quite lackluster. It provides you with 50% chance for enhanced orbs to fall down, which is kind of pointless. It really doesn't do anything. Like, maybe if you use her as a sub on 5 orb 1 enhanced teams, it can help to ensure like off-color orbs come down enhanced, but it's really niche and situational, so it doesn't really do much for the most part. So we're mostly looking at the fact that it's a 5-turn cooldown, so you are able to inherit over top of it. So that is a little unfortunate, and she does have less awakenings, but she does have the follow-up attack awakening, and this follow-up attack awakening is considered one of the strongest in the game because it allows basically a card to single-handedly deal with resolve bosses. And this is important because you are basically able to save yourself an active skill, because nowadays when we're fighting through like challenge level 10s and newer content, bosses tend to seem to have the ability to have various shields. They have absorbs, they have voids, they have combo shields, they have resolves, they have crazy and silly mechanics, and they probably can bake a cake all at the same time. Like, it's just getting a little ridiculous of how much mechanics a boss has. And if you have a follow-up attack awakening, you're able to basically neutralize one of those dangerous mechanics without actually having to budget an active skill for that counter. So that's why follow-up attack is so desirable. Furthermore, Kami is Presently, this will change in the future, but she is the only dark card to actually have follow-up attack. So all those dark-centered teams now have an option for follow-up attack awakenings, and this can open up a lot of new doors for team building options. So I don't want to take away from the fact that Cammy is a weak leader. She's actually very powerful because, again, like Yogg, she has absurdly high damage potential. It's just that her active skill is a little more lackluster by comparison, and to a certain extent, I feel that having follow-up attack on both leaders is a bit of a waste. You only need one, so you're basically losing out a lot of awakenings just to bring that one follow-up attack. Well, basically one follow-up attack per leader. So you are losing out a bit there from a leadership point of view, but she can be used as a sub. And for her team building, you do have lots of options for wood and dark cards. Sorry, cards that can spawn wood and dark orbs, which isn't basically needed for herself. Obviously, you can't use options like Pandora or Eshamali, but you have board changers like Zuo, Mei, Mitsunari, to name a few. So this does give a bit of flexibility as to what you can bring for her team. And if you do wish to read a bit more about Cammy and what her team building options are, there is another individual who started to blog a bit more about Puzzle and Dragons, and you can check out the Puzzled Chef here. Next is this guy, and this guy here is the only card in the game who provides 3 turns of haste, which is pretty amazing. Fortunately, it comes with a lengthy 20-turn cooldown, as well as offering 300% orb movement time as a collateral benefit. So you have to wait 20 turns to get 3 turns of haste. And the idea of haste is, for a lot of teams, is to basically kind of recycle active skills after they've been used in, say, longer dungeons or shorter dungeons if it's important for certain co-op farming builds. But because this is taking 20 turns to charge up, is it really justifiable to bring as an inherit to cycle actives back again? Furthermore, the fact that their collateral benefit is nearly useless is a bit disappointing, because if we're to look at other strong haste options available, we have Mori Montanari and Mitsunari. They both have much shorter base cooldowns. They only offer 2 turns of haste, but that's probably enough for the most part, but they have a very powerful board changer alongside of it. So basically you're able to hasten up your team to get those active skills back up, but you also have a kill board ready to deal with whatever spawn you're facing. So this is a little frustrating in my opinion of how this 20 turn cooldown with 3 turns haste cannot be fully utilized. So we need to kind of just transition away from the fact that they're not going to be the greatest sub nor the greatest inherit, and we need to focus on them as a leader. And they do have an interesting leader skill mechanic because they basically combine rainbow elements as well as leaving X number of orbs left on the board alongside of a no Skyfall clause. So one part of their multiplier requires you to match any 4 out of 5 colors, which should be doable from almost every given board, and the other component wants you to have at least 5 or less orbs remaining after you match. Now, if there's no Skyfalls, you can basically see how many orbs are left over. So from a given 6x5 board, you will have 7 to 8 combos every single time. However, in the case of this card here, you don't actually have to achieve any level of combos. And in fact, in order to kind of reduce the number of orbs on the board, you would actually begin to connect those orbs in 4s or 5s if that should exist, if it doesn't come in nice sets of 3. And with that in mind, you should be able to feasibly achieve your multiplier on a relatively consistent basis. It's obviously going to take a bit of thinking and forethought as well as a slight modification to your matching style, because a lot of times you make combos and leave those orbs scattered, but you want to now in this case connect them all, but it should be reasonably consistent, and you are able to deal 400 times damage, which is quite amazing. Unfortunately, there is no defensive multiplier nor any shielding mechanic, and that's going to basically leave them vulnerable and basically classify them as a glass cannon. And we don't really need a glass cannon. We have so many different leaders that do so much more than they can with much higher consistency. Yogg is going to hit for basically more damage, but more consistent. Anubis just blows everyone else out of the water, especially if Diablo's pairing consistency is raised. Like, there's not enough going for this card here to really justify their usage as a leader. It's going to be fun, it can clear certain content, but it's going to be annoying for the most part if there are a lot of mechanics and you have to basically dance around because you can't really tank a hit very effectively. So this is going to be an interesting card, but it can't be used efficiently as an inherit or as a sub, so it's just in an interesting spot in your leadership roster. So the Pantheon tier list, basically, it's very challenging to maintain this. It's a little easier in all honesty to kind of just focus on the cards at the very top in S, and everything else below, like, it's kind of accurate, but it's kind of like, well, certain cards, it's hard to say, like, are they an A? Yes, they are an A, but are they an A plus or A minus? It gets challenging, but more so the trends I want to just basically highlight are Orochi is dropping down, mostly because delays are becoming less fashionable. With follow-up attack, with the various fusion style actives, with box awakenings, we don't need to dance out and play through challenging mechanics anymore. We can kind of just blast through them. So even though Orochi is still the best delay option, he has a massive amount of health, he's still a strong sub, it's just less elite. And I kind of want to just draw attention to that factor of, like, kind of the shift or trend of where the meta is going for Puzzle and Dragons. In addition, I've been dropping down Sima Yi, Pandora, and Isis out of S because they haven't necessarily become weaker cards. In fact, like, Isis technically gained a new evolution relatively recently, somewhat the same of Pandora, but the problem is the teams that they are used on are becoming weaker. Dark Athena is no longer as amazing as she used to be, and Sima Yi is, for the most part, a weaker Haku. And maybe some players are a little salty that they were voted in the Player's Choice Godfest, but that's another story. Pandora is still a powerful card, but she can't be used on Kami teams. Dark Metatron is also starting to decline as well. Pandora is an average sub on Dark Athena, so it's just not as great as she used to be. And Isis is still a viable option for blue bind clearing, especially for blue hunter, but Odin Dragon is a much better choice, as well as the fact that Raw Dragon teams don't necessarily need her, as well as Raw Dragon just kind of declining at the same time. And then the other one I decided to, like, take a look at was Vitra, just bumping them up, mostly because they have a powerful nuking option for a lot of button farming teams, so it's a little more valuable than maybe I placed them at beforehand. So basically I just covered all of those. Again, you can basically read all this through, but with Vitra, you can utilize him as an inherit on cards like Jizz, and Jizz, who has basically dark typing, so you gain the stat transfer, will gain bonus damage, but the co-op boost awakening will enable the Jizz to basically deal more damage, and it's going to be a valuable card combo to have for button farming teams. So, Godfest exclusive tier list. This has actually seen quite a bit of shifting around, and I'm going to basically elaborate and explain all the changes. So, Kami debuts at S, which is no real surprise, but we have Sylvie, Fenrir-Viz, Paimon, Balden, A10, all shifting up into A from B, and Dark Metatron going from S to A. We also have Raijin and Gremory going from A to B, as well as that new thing debuting in B. Finally, in C, we actually have Sharius moving up because of the new evolution, which should come soon, out of D, and Kana going from B to C. So basically, Sylvie, Fenrir-Viz, and Paimon all gained these new evolutions that basically gave them sexier and new awakenings. Sylvie gained 7 combo as well as follow-up attack, which are basically two of the most desirable things to have in the game. Fenrir-Viz gained a second god killer, as well as the potential to actually be a very competent leader at this point in time, so that's very handy, as well as Paimon getting that follow-up attack, which is very delicious and powerful for Yogg teams, as well as the fact that Paimon also has incredibly high base health. So he's just a very desirable card to have all around now. Furthermore, Balden and A10 have moved from B to A, mostly because the fact that killers are now somewhat more popular and more meta, because now we're facing spawns of crazy amounts of health, and the ability to basically stack killers on or against certain spawns is beneficial. We do have basically the chance to do 9 times damage on a relatively consistent basis, and even 27 times against certain spawns. So this is very important for playing through challenging content. It's great to have killer awakenings basically available on your team, and they can lend to higher spikes. Now, obviously, certain voids are going to be problematic, like the damage void, but if they gained a box awakening, which I highly doubt, it'd be pretty game breaking for those cards. Dark Metatron goes from S to A, and even though Dark Metatron is one of my favorite leaders in the game, I just enjoy the playstyle, she's just not as viable as compared to other leaders at this point in time. There are leaders that are faster, that are safer, and less annoying to play through because, yes, she is another health-sensitive leader, but it's the reverse direction compared to Yogg. And you need to manage your health quite carefully because if you go above 80%, you have no damage, and that is a little problematic. Like, you can, yes, bring Durga and Harrods to bring your health back down, but then if there's a big preemptive, you got to make sure you heal up. Like, it's just a lot of micromanagement, and yes, she can still farm Cosmic Trinity, but it's not as efficient. She can still clear harder content, but again, it's just not as powerful and viable as other options available. So that's why she's being brought down. Furthermore, a lot of players used to use her as a no Skyfall farming leader when paired with Liu Bei, but now we have Raphael, who doesn't have to worry about this health clause multiplier, so it's just like she's just losing ground, like losing that niche she used to have. Raijin and Gremory are both being demoted, mostly because even though Gremory got a new evolution, it's not really helping her. She doesn't fit on any team effectively. She can override orbs on Cammy. Rose are not that popular, even though we have that potential super follow-up attack from Halloween Nene in a future patch. It's just like they're not fitting anywhere very well at this point in time, so they're just being demoted down to reflect that they don't have that much usage compared to beforehand, and to reflect the fact that they're not as viable as other A options. Sharius goes from D to C, and this is because Sharius gains a new evolution. They basically have a terrible active skill in my opinion still, but they gain Guard Break, and that terrible active skill has perfect synergy with Guard Break. You can pop their active skill, and now you can always trigger your Guard Break, so that is beneficial and meaningful, as well as having Devil and Healer Killer Awakenings. Having 2 killers is very valuable because against certain spawns you're dealing 9 times damage. And now we only have Light Callie in D. Maybe Light Callie will get love and improvements at some point, but for now she's kind of a meme. And last but not least, we have Canna going from B to C. So Canna was actually once an S tier card and very desirable to own because she was basically a top tier sub for Raw Dragon teams. However, Raw Dragon has naturally declined over time, as well as the fact that even though she has 4 TPAs, the introduction of 7 combo awakenings are just more powerful. And this is because 7 combo awakenings are more consistent. You can basically always match 7 combos from a given board. So those cards are going to be dealing damage all the time. Having 4 required orbs can happen, but it can also jeopardize various combos for your team overall. Instead of making 8 combos, you might make 7 because you have to use that extra light orb to stick on 4. It has issues with spacing, and it's just not as efficient overall unless everyone has TPA. So right now we have a lot of cards with 7 combos, so it's just not as effective overall. And furthermore, Canna has one of the worst active skills in the game. It is a 2 times burst for 1 turn with haste on a 10 turn cooldown, I believe, which is terrible value in like every way, shape, and form. So everyone overrides it, but the fact that it's 10 turns is a little challenging to justify, so she just doesn't fit in as well as she used to, and she's getting quite poor overall. She might even drop down further because like she doesn't really fit in, to be honest. Now, these are the featured Pantheons for the day. Oh, look at that. There are none. That is a little spooky. Lackluster Carnival. So the Wise Dragons and Heroic Carnival basically is lackluster. There are 2 times rates, so good luck getting them. It's not going to be that great. Yes, the Wise Dragons are amazing burst cards. The Heroic Warriors are useful to have, but 2 times rates would have been something you saw like 4 years ago, not in 2017. So not so great. So putting it all together, so there are 5 times rates applying with the exception of 2 6-star Godfest exclusives on these respective days. So on day 1 it's Cammy and Amino, and then day 2 is Nay and Canna. Why Canna? We don't know. Maybe hypothetically it's a dragon color. Nay is a dragon color. Fits the theme, but there could have been something far better to make this Godfest a little more tasty overall. So, in my opinion, day 1 is a little more favorable just because it has better 10 times rates for those featured cards, has just a little better distribution overall in my opinion. Again, it's all just based on what I feel is better. It doesn't necessarily reflect the fact that day 2 may be better for yourself, but what I really want you to consider is how important is it to roll in this Godfest. It is only 5 times rates, and yes, there's a debut of new Godfest exclusives, but those will be featured every single Godfest in the future. So is it really worth pursuing 5 times rates with no Pantheons, even though there are some at 10 times? I feel the answer is no. However, a lot of players may really need these Godfest exclusives. Furthermore, if again you're a new player, you need something to get going. Like it can be a little hard to wait every 2 weeks for that perfect Godfest when you have these stones burning a hole in your pocket. So it may be worth rolling for certain players, especially if you're missing most of the cards. But let me know what you think about this Godfest in the comments below. How do you feel about the 2 new Godfest exclusives, as well as do you think you are going to roll and participate? Hopefully you all have a fantastic day, and happy puzzling.